Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my unwavering support to Budget 2022, titled Steadfast Against All Challenges, Resolute in Building Our One Guyana, which was brilliantly prepared and presented by my colleague, the Senior Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance, the Honorable Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh. Honorable Dr. Singh has presented yet again another budget that will allow our government to continue our work started when we assumed office in August 2020, and to fulfill our commitments to every Guyanese citizen, changing and touching their lives as we work towards achieving a prosperous future together. Prosperous future together. I must extend congratulations to the Honorable Minister and his hard-working, committed team who've all toiled efficiently and fervently to complete this budget. Mr. Speaker, this $552.9 billion budget is groundbreaking and transformative. No doubt, it holds people at the very center of its focus, with no new taxes, and I repeat, no new taxes, and a robust development agenda. Budget 2022 stands as a glaring testimony to our government's continued commitment to the people of Guyana, all the people of Guyana, including you on the opposition benches. Mr. Speaker, we just listened to 1 hour of negativity. However, that was a farewell speech. And I didn't expect anything better. However, it is protocol that on behalf of my government, led by President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, and our General Secretary of the leading and winning political party in Guyana, the PPPC, that I take this opportunity to compliment the Honorable Joseph Harmon on his sterling service as leader of the opposition. I nearly said as member of parliament, but he's still a member of parliament. But as leader of the opposition. Sterling but interruptive. I would like to reiterate our government's position that we are ready to work with whoever is appointed or elected leader of the opposition in the interests of Guyana. What we ask in return is for the new leader of the opposition to accept the legitimacy of our government. This is a government that was elected by the people of Guyana. Perhaps one of the most peaceful elections that we had in this country on the 2nd of March, 2020. You held on to power when you knew that you should have demitted office 3 months after December 2018. Because had we stuck to the timeline of you having lost the no confidence motion, you would have been in opposition since sometime in April 2019. But you know, you could hold on to power as long as you want. But once we have the elections, same to do, same place you will end up, on the other side. You know, you laugh, but this is a serious issue. As a country, and I'm not a historian, but I'm a Guyanese, we fought for democracy in this country. We endured undemocratic government in this country for 28 years. 1992, we had the return to democracy in Guyana. Under the late Dr. Chedi Jagan. I was never PNC. I was a soldier. I was a soldier without a party card. A professional soldier. If you could go and find a party card for me, bring it. Never a PNC. Always a soldier serving in the interest of defense and security of Guyana. I became a politician on the 5th of January 2020 when I went on the stage in Kitty at the Force Rally for the PPPC. And if you remember what I said at the Force Rally, get ready for victory. Go back and check the tape. Ready for victory. Mr. Speaker, you know, I wanted to comment on all the speakers before, but this is worrisome. We had the outgoing leader of the opposition, who I quite rightly thank for his service, delivering his speech. And we had more members on the government side in the House listening to the leader of the opposition. What kind of leadership is that? I am not accustomed to that leadership. You should be supporting your leader, whether he's in government or he's in opposition. Where are the supporters? Where are the elected APNU, AFC parliamentarians? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of 31? 31. Shame. You know, we on the government side must be worried. You know why? Because we believe in democracy. And if you believe in democracy, you must have a viable and strong opposition. We are in worrying times in Guyana today. You know why? Because we don't have a leader of the opposition. Mr. Harman resigned, and we're waiting for a leader, still waiting. I am disappointed, we're all disappointed. I'm sure you're disappointed, because whoever is the new leader of the opposition should have been delivering that speech instead of walking around and handing out placards like this whole week. Georgetown, Borbies handing out flyers like this. That is what you relegate your leader of opposition to. We need your leader of opposition to be in this house doing the people's work.
Yes, work for it.
We have a situation where one contender, and perhaps I don't want to call name, you know, is accusing the other contender because he's leader of the PNCR. He's not the leader of opposition yet. One contender is saying, and I have this from the Airways, Friday 22nd of October, that contender supports Harmon for PNCR leadership. He says no room for Black People Party tribalism. And then the next day, same wave, the next contender refers to the previous contender as a just come, knows nothing about my work among Indo-Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, we are in worrying times in Guyana. We have a struggle for the position of leader of the opposition in your house, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know you have very good skills at negotiating and conflict resolution. I do ask of you, I humbly ask of you, Mr. Speaker, to please intervene and resolve this conflict so we can have a leader of the opposition by the next sitting. Our country deserves a leader of the opposition. And a leader of the opposition is important for representative democracy here in Guyana. We don't want a one-sided arrangement. So we anxiously await your work, Mr. Speaker, and we anxiously welcome the leader of the opposition. Mr. Speaker, the outgoing leader of the opposition spent 1 hour trying to discredit the most transformative budget in the history of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, this is the same utensil as he was called, not my word, the same utensil as he was called of the former head of state of this country, who I rather suspect was one of the main architects of your attempt to hold on to power, knowing fully well that you would have lost that election. And that is hurtful to the people of Guyana. Not only losers, you were caught rigging.
Honorable Prime Minister, if you're speaking to me, I'm convicted.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order.
The APNU AFC,
Mr. Speaker,
as reported.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order.
Honorable Prime Minister, we have the Deputy Speaker on his feet.
41.6 of the standing order, Mr. Speaker. I think the Honorable Prime Minister is imputing ill motive on my character. When he speaks of that, I think maybe he needs to contextualize
Honorable
which
Deputy
party.
Speaker, the Prime Minister was addressing the Speaker, and he was saying you. So I wouldn't entertain that, but I contend that remark, because speakers speak to the speaker, and he has corrected it. Go ahead, Honorable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I stand corrected. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable outgoing Member of Parliament and Leader of the Opposition said the average Guyanese has no benefit from previous budgets. This is the same parliamentarian in a previous government from 2015 to 2020 that increased 200 taxes, 200 taxes and other forms of payments to his government. That has affected the lives of all the people of Guyana. This is the same government that increased Are you going to allow me to speak? You increase the license for the donkey cart, man. And you're telling us about no sympathy or no plan for the poor people of this country. When we got into office on the 2nd of August, Mr. Speaker, our forest budget that I fondly refer to as the rescue budget, the emergency budget for our country, we have reversed the 200 taxes and rates, including the one for the donkey cart man. This is a government that placed a tax on education, Mr. Speaker. You send your children to private school, you had to pay tax on that, compliments of the APNU AFC coalition government. Tax on health, you go to a private health facility, you had to pay tax. Tax on drugs. It's obvious that they had a philosophy of tax and spend. Tax and spend economics. But you know what? They didn't spend the money that they got from taxation on the people of Guyana. They spent it on themselves.
That's the point. Living a lavish life.
So how can you come and lecture us about a budget that does not provide for the people of Guyana? A budget that provides $600,000 starting this year for everybody who has to do dialysis. Mr. Speaker, I serve in the military. I interact with veterans. And this was one of the issues that was raised by the leadership of the Veteran Foundation. But many shut-ins, and they have kidney issues, they're challenged to pay for their treatment. And this is the budget, and this is the government that has provided that this year. This is a caring government. This is a caring budget. This is a government for the people of Guyana. This is a people-centered budget. Mr. Speaker, this government had to return the We Care cash grant. And I wish to remind them that is something we started in the last government, before I became a politician, to start in the last PPPC government. The coalition won the election, the APNU-FC, and one of the first things they did was to remove that payment. They claimed they had no fiscal space to continue that payment. But they had fiscal space to utilize money, to enrich themselves and to live the good life that they promised to all the people of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, we have since returned the Because We Care cash grant. In 2021, myself and all the ministers and parliamentarians went to every village, every community where we have our school children and paid over that money. to all the people of Guyana. And if you need any explanation for the concept of one Guyana, that single act should explain to you what we mean by one Guyana. Everything that is provided under this government is for all the people of Guyana. The only qualification for that payout is that you had to be in school. And you know what? It didn't matter whether your school was a private school. You also got the money. And the same government that Mr. Harman is accusing has decided in this budget to increase the money to $25,000, and the money for uniform will move from $4,000 to $5,000. So it's $30,000. $30,000 per child. I have grandchildren, I have neighbors, I have friends, and all of them are coming to me and say, Mr. Prime Minister, we thank you. And we want you to convey to your president, to the general secretary, and to your ministers for such a decision. This is what the ordinary people are saying to us. And you come into this house and tell us that the budget is not for all of us. Mr. Speaker, we increased the old age pension by $3,000 this year to $28,000. And I have my old veteran friends, I know what they're telling me, thank you very much. My old veteran friends, because they're getting the NIS, they're getting the state pension. Incidentally, a decision was made by a previous PPPC government that the state pension must not be less than half the minimum wage. And that has helped so many veterans who would have retired 40 years ago. So they are having half of the minimum wage. The NIS they're having too, which is equivalent to half the minimum wage, and now they have not $25,000 but $28,000. You did nothing. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Harman talked about sugar. He talked about free education and failure to introduce free education in our manifesto. We will reintroduce free education. It's a work in progress. Don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. You need timelines, baby. I want you to read this document. Every member of parliament on that side should go back and read this document. This is your document. Our vision for unity, stability, and development. And there's a reason why we will only refer to this. You know why? Because after you prepare this, you had 5 years in office. 5 years in office to deliver to the people of Guyana on this manifesto. And it's so sad. You did almost nothing. Nothing. Well, I take my word back. You talk about a green state development strategy. So you painted the office of the president, you painted the residence of the president, and many other buildings in green. And there were some bridges around Georgetown that painted in green and yellow. You know? That is so sad. I am a brigadier for life. For life. You can retire from the army, but you don't retire your rank, baby. You are the people, and I have my notes here I'm going through. In your campaigns, you said sugar is too big to fail. Who said that? And then you failed us all. You sent home 7,000 workers. But you know what? Before you send them home, you commission, and you all like to do that. Commission of inquiry. You had a commission of inquiry, Mr. Speaker. They had a commission of inquiry, and the recommendation was clear. Keep the estates open. Go and read the recommendations. Keep the estates open. First you said sugar is too big to fail. Then you did a commission of inquiry, recommending keep the estates open, and you sent home 7,000 sugar workers. And you closed the estates.
How much it was?
And now you come and tell us that you will form the next government. No free education, according to your manifesto. You remove the money from the people, the poor people of this country. You close the estate against your own commission inquiry. You lost the election, and you refuse to demit office. And now you come in this house to tell us that you are on a uphill trajectory which will lead you to form the next government. Well, we don't know which government you're talking about. Certainly it's not 2025. You will not be forming the government in 2025. You promised more disposable income, and Mr. Harman just said that, for people in your 2015-2020 manifesto, but as we said, we found out that was a fallacy. You taxed the people into submission, and they voted you out of office. You never conceptualized any comprehensive plan to deal with COVID-19, and yet you come into this house and criticize us. All you did for COVID-19 was to lock down this country. You locked down this country. And Mr. Harman, the goodly gentleman, made himself Director General of the task force. And they did nothing. You built a shell at Liliondal. We got into power and we had to fix everything and return this country to some semblance of order, protecting the lives and livelihood of the people of Guyana. When we assumed office, you could not have even done a proper COVID-19 test in this country. And you hadn't adequate testing kit. No PPEs for the workers. The same workers that you want to defend now, the frontline workers. No ventilators. Those are the things that we had to deal with. And yet you come here and you pontificate about how caring government you had from 2015 to 2020. We are on record of keeping on the job or employed all public service workers. We have not sent home any public service worker as a result during the COVID-19 pandemic. The teachers were at home and they got paid. The public servants, they got paid. All we did is return them to work. You had them locked down.
Politicians.
You criticized the $109 billion in our budget that is earmarked for infrastructure spending. But you don't have to be an economist to know that infrastructure spending is transformative. It has a multiplier effect. And that will drive the development of this country. That will drive foreign direct investment in this country. And that will catapult us into a developed state faster than we expect. development, and we hear a lot about development throughout the last 4 days, is better on a sound democratic foundation. Democracy first, and development will follow. What you wanted is to remain in office in a democratic manner and still talk about development of this country. It did not work. It will not work. The people voted you out of office. You keep talking about the cash grant and communities were bypassed, and we keep asking you for the list. You're making this allegation, and we keep asking you for the list to help us. Give us the list. We have not bypassed any community. We had pink slips that we gave out, and we went back into those communities and paid the money. You said sovereignty is a bipartisan issue. We agree. Mr. Harmon said that. Sovereignty of Guyana is a bipartisan issue. We agree. And then he talked about patrimony, which should be a bipartisan issue. And he went on to talk about oil and gas and consultation. But you know, Mr. Speaker, the PPPC was in opposition when the coalition government signed that PSA. And perhaps if you would have consulted with the PPPC while they were in opposition, we would have had a better PSA with Exxon today. You talk about election reform. We're looking forward to your submissions on electoral reform. So kindly have a speaker, Mr. Speaker, kindly have a leader of the opposition as early as possible, so we can benefit from your contributions to the consultative process. Right? Right, so we're waiting a response. You talk about us not consulting with the GPSU and just offering salary increases unilaterally. But for 5 years, did you consult with the GPSU? But they were toothless poodle, right? And you continue in your bad ways of unilaterally deciding what you will pay the public servants, and now you come here to us to ask us that we should stop and engage in collective labor bargaining. Mr. Harmon talks about the state asset recovery, and it was an agency that was set up, and he talked about 19 cases that was placed before, 19 cases that were witch hunt cases, and the state asset recovery agency became an agency of jobs for the boys and girls. It was a waste of money. That is the money for that agency, used to run that agency, that could have provided the fiscal space for the transfer payments, for the social sector safety nets that were necessary in this country during your time in office. And you talk about accountability and try to preach to us about accountability, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, The 2016, 2017, and 2018 Auditor General report is replete with instances of mismanagement of the finances of this country and corrupt dealings that should lead to further investigation. Mr. Harmon talked about the NRF Act, and he referred to Andrew Barr, the Export and Sovereign Wealth Fund that the Honorable Attorney General would have referred to earlier. But, Mr. Speaker, the NRF Act is now law, since it's already assented to by the President of Guyana, and it's a progressive piece of legislation that will lead to proper management and a high degree of transparency of our revenues from oil and gas. Mr. Speaker, I wish to place on record that the so-called civil society that Mr. Harmon talked about in his address was silent when the APNU AFC government hurriedly passed in an illegal manner the NRF Act of 2019 at a time when we should have been planning for elections in Guyana. We have people who are telling us about the illegality of the 2021 Act, but they're silent on what happened in 2019. Mr. Speaker, every cent that goes into and comes out of the NRF Act, and I'm speaking for the people of Guyana to understand, will have to withstand the scrutiny of us in this House of Assembly. It has to come here. And there are many layers of control that will assure the people of Guyana of a high level of transparency, unlike what was proposed by the 2019 NRF Act that placed immense powers in the hands of the then minister, a minister who was very opaque in explaining to the people of this country what was done with the 18 million United States dollars bonus. If you cannot clearly account to the people for 18 million US dollars, Mr. Speaker, I can imagine what will happen now. Because we have 607 million US dollars in the fund, and there's every likelihood by all projections to having just under $1 billion, all things being equal, going into the fund in 2022. And those are by the commentators out there. So, Mr. Speaker, we are in good hands. We have an act that will assure a high level of transparency to the people of Guyana. And Mr. Speaker, the funds will be expended as stated in the Act for the present and future generations of Guyana. And that's why in this budget, we are requesting to utilize money from the fund, because we are building the foundation to assure a better life for all the people of Guyana. The honorable member talked about the PUC expired, but he failed to mention that is a process that is required for the re-establishment of the PUC.
The PPC, the Public Procurement Commission, the PPC.
I stand corrected, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about an opposition who will come here and preach to us, an opposition who, when they were in government, did not respect the same process and procedures that they come to preach to us about now in the interest of good governance. And this will ensure that they remain on that side of the house. We heard about guardrails of democracy, respect for the rule of law, adherence to checks and balances. Mr. Speaker, we are adhering to and observing all that was mentioned by the outgoing leader of the opposition. And we wish to take this opportunity to assure the people of Guyana that the PPPC government will be a government that will practice good governance. Good governance, regard for the rule of law, transparency, respect for fiscal policies are all built on this solid foundation, the solid democratic foundation that I mentioned before. Mr. Speaker, early on, we had many speakers who came to this House and misrepresented a number of issues that I can deal with. The Honorable Cathy Hughes came and regaled us with a number of untruths. We thought I was lying, Cathy Hughes. But, you know, Mr. Speaker, as it...
PM, lying we can't use.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Cathy Hughes, when she was the Minister of Public Telecommunications, benefited from the same advisors that advised me as Minister responsible for telecommunications. In 64 days, on the 5th of October, 2020, I signed the commencement order liberalizing the telecommunications sector in this country. And it was based on the same advice that was given to the Honorable Minister 2 or 3 years before by the same advisors. And yet the minister came to this House, and the former minister came to this House today and start talk about issues of compensation for GTT, when she knew fully well that the issue of compensation did not arise since GTT voluntarily complied with all the provisions of the law as we issued the commencement order, as I said, 64 days after taking office. She went on to mention about the issue of tax, which is a totally separate and apart issue and discussion that is engaging the GRA and the company. She went on to refer to every Jesus has a Judas, but I don't know who she was referring to. But certainly, every Jesus, even Jesus had a Judas. So I don't know who she was referring to as Jesus or as Judas, but she certainly demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding on this whole issue of liberalization of the telecommunications sector. Or maybe she was afraid that the sky would fall on our heads if we liberalized. Her real advisors, as I mentioned before, convinced her that we should go ahead. So now that we have gone ahead and liberalized, and the sky has not fallen on our heads, she cannot believe it. So she is still searching for some deal. Mr. Speaker, through the act of liberalization of the telecommunications sector, all we are interested in on this side of the House is a better deal for the people of Guyana. Better service at the best price for all the people of Guyana. And I wish to assure this House and the people of Guyana that the Public Utilities Commission will be engaged and will be asked to pay more attention to the quality of service in the telecommunications sector during 2022 in Guyana. She went on to talk about the call center. But what she should have told us is that the call center was closed under her. And that led to unemployment of a lot of young people, over 100 young people in Linden, the young people that they love so much, in a stronghold of the PNC or APNU. You refer to that as your stronghold. We have, since August the 2nd, rehabilitated that building, and with the guidance of Dr. Ashni Singh, we have facilitated an investor who has since reopened that facility and already employed 100 young people with the intention of employing more in the near future. Young Lindeners, the Honorable Katius should never speak about corruption to this House. She gave contracts to her company, and it's in the papers. Guyana Times, May the 2nd, 2019. Telecommunications Ministry awarded contract to Minister's Company. Oh, it's still news. Look at that.
What about the $90 million you transfer into your account in 3 months? What about that? You got the man house reporter.
The Honorable Katius earlier told us in this House that it is the PNC government who was trying to remove the monopoly from GTT. But we know different. It is the PNC government who gave GTT the same monopoly that she talked about earlier today. And it is the APNU AFC government, including the Honorable Katius, who failed for 5 years to remove that monopoly. We did it in 64 days.
64 days.
Mr. Speaker,
Three house lots and a mansion.
it is so sad.
Four house lots and a mansion. And one for Brother James and one for Brother Raymond.
Mr. Speaker, it is understandable why the honorable members sitting on the other side of this House are bitter and will not support this budget, nor any future budget presented by the PPPC. We cannot expect anything different. It is a proven fact by now to all Guyanese that the APNU AFC has immeasurable disdain for the development of our country and the improvement of the lives of our people. Their own supporters, the many people who voted for them, have lost confidence in their representation. Mr. Speaker, it shows, and for that they must hang their heads. You know why? Because people do not support their baseless utterances, nor wish to be associated with their madness. They have continuously betrayed the people of this country, both in government and in opposition once again. Mr. Speaker, even in this honorable House, they have failed to conduct themselves properly and act like normal civilized human beings with dignity. Even nursery schools children know better and can do better and will do better. From grabbing the mace and running around this sacred dome screaming, to abusing civilian staff who have no interest in anything else but performing their duties honorably. The APNU AFC parliamentarians have done it all, and they owe the people they represent in this National Assembly many apologies, not only in words, but in action. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to the presentations of the honorable members over the last 5 days, sitting on the other side, and we can all agree that it's the same tune being sung by each and every one of them, including the outgoing leader of the opposition. They have showcased to this House and the Guyanese people their inadequacies and grave incompetence by being unable to grasp the whole purpose of Budget 2022. But, Mr. Speaker, we cannot expect much from those who have proven time and time again to lack basic comprehension skills. And you know, Mr. Speaker, when people choose to be stuck in their ways to the point of no return, and after having realized that no amount of help will make a difference, Mr. Speaker, sometimes you just have to decide that it's a total waste of time trying and hoping any longer for change. Mr. Speaker, I've said this before, and I will say it again. The APNU AFC coalition is against anything that is progressive for this country and its people.
That is true. That is true.
And it isn't today's story. Throughout their time in government, which was overstayed, by the way, after losing the no confidence motion and disrespecting our Constitution and the entire nation, they had the opportunity to serve, but what did they do? They squandered taxpayers' money like there was no tomorrow. On what, Mr. Speaker? As I mentioned before, themselves and family and friends. And if any one of them is currently suffering from memory loss, let me remind them that it was their former ministers who, while they were supposed to be serving the people honestly, took it upon themselves, with absolutely no approval from the people of this country, to purchase jewelry, to decorate themselves, of the hard-earned contributions of the ordinary men and women out there. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, but they found it fit to live luxuriously, and as if a 50% salary increase for them, and them alone, was not enough, they racked up billions of dollars, not millions, but billions on food alone, all on the backs of the people of this country, with next to nothing given back in service from them. They failed the people and this country while in government and continue their record of failure in opposition, only getting better and better every time at it. It is obvious that what the APNU AFC members aim to excel in, nothing else. And it breaks my heart to see this, because our people deserve better than what they offer them. Mr. Speaker, it is indeed amusing every time we come to this House and have to listen to the deception and untruths spewed by the honorable members sitting in opposition. Each and every one of them appear before this House and proudly prove every single time why they earn their seats on that side. And so shall it be for a very, very, very long time. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC is known for empty lip service, all talks with no substance. I'm convinced that most of them have mastered the art of theatrical performance, as this is the order of their typical day. Mr. Speaker, I must address many of the falsehood spoken in this House by members of the APNU AFC during this budget debate. But I wish to say that I did address many of the falsehood already, and I don't want to bore the members here. But I need to mention, Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC members are brazen to come here to talk about housing, salary increase, pension, global warming and climate change, democracy, and many other issues that they ought not to have the audacity to speak about. Mr. Speaker, when the APNU AFC barely managed to allocate a mere 7,534 house lots and did not develop one single housing scheme during the 5 years in office, it is our PPPC government that came into office in 2020, just 18 months now, and distributed more than 10,000 house lots a day. And I tell you this, it is our PPP government that will distribute 50,000 house lots and possibly more by 2025. It is under the PPPC that Guyanese in every category and income bracket are now finally able to access and own house lots and affordable housing, having their dreams realized with our government, a necessity that was denied and far from reality under the APNU AFC government. Mr. Speaker, we had members of the opposition that said the people of Guyana are perishing and our government has lost the battle against COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, let me remind those members that when the PPPC came into government, we took over from them and they did not even have the capacity, as I mentioned before, to do testing up to that time. I guess they were too caught up in attempting to rig the elections for 5 months, so public health and safety was the least of their priorities. Hanging on to power was. some guts the honorable members have come in here to say this when it was their government, the APNU AFC, that discontinued, I keep repeating myself here, the education cash grant and saw fit to remove the assistance to our children and poor people that they so claim to love. Mr. Speaker, it is under our PPPC government that the children of this nation in public schools are once again able to receive the cash grant, the school grant to assist their parents. Mr. Speaker, the opposition had 5 years to do all of the things that were mentioned in their manifesto. And as we mentioned before, they have not lifted a finger to get any or many of the things that they promised the people started. Mr. Speaker, the Chief Whip, the Honorable Christopher Jones, during his address, went on about Budget 2022 being disrespectful to the intelligence of the Guyanese people. Sir, what is really disrespectful to the intelligence of the Guyanese people is the Chief Whip who benefited from public funds to buy barber chairs for his private barber shop. He went on to say that Gaisiku has cut its production target by 1/3 and questioned whether government will cut the allocation to Gaisuku by 1/3. Once again, Mr. Speaker, they have opened assault against the sugar workers. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Christopher Jones hypocritically questioned, what have the public servants, teachers, police, soldiers done to the PPP, and said that our budget is silent on salary increase for them. Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Honorable Christopher Jones, what did the police and soldiers do to the PNC, AP, and UAFC that caused them to take away their 1-month bonus? It is our government that fulfilled our promise to the joint services by ensuring that we reinstated the annual 1-month bonus, which they took away from those much deserving servants of our country. It is the APNU AFC members who said publicly that paying this bonus to these workers was equated to bribery. But you are mistaken. What you know of yourself should not be mistaken as the same ideology shared and accepted by others. It is the same APNU AFC when in government failed to pay the 20% promise to the law enforcement officers in the first year in office in their manifesto. And sugar workers, as mentioned by the honorable member. The APNU AFC so loved the people of Region 10 and Linden, and in 5 years, they have not repaired the Suzaik-Linden Highway, and that is provided for in this budget that you're criticizing. Also provided for in this budget is for the Linden to Mubura Road, a very important artery from Linden into the mining areas of this country. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC parliamentarians, the Honorable Don Hastings Williams, and Honorable Sherwin Holder, and all others are hypocritical to come here mentioning anything about CSOs and the CSO program when they were the ones that shut down the program and fired 2,000 CSOs. Their party, while in government, did to poor working class people who were earning a living. They took bread out of the mouths of those people and many others. They dared to claim that the coalition has a track record of training and caring for young people. What about the CSOs they fired? And before, what about the thousands of young persons that they fired from Gaisuku in 2015? I did mention before, what about the people who lost their jobs at the call center in Linden? Mr. Speaker, as I move on to points under the responsibility, areas under the responsibility of the Prime Minister, I want to thank the Honorable Minister with responsibility for finance for the general allocations in the budget to the Guyana Energy Agency that was able to commence several major initiatives within the energy sector aimed at supporting our government's strategic vision of providing our citizens with more affordable, stable, and reliable energy through an energy mix that includes hydropower, natural gas, solar, and wind. Among those included the advancement of the works on the installation of a 1.5 megawatt solar farm for Bartica, a 1 megawatt solar farm for Ret'd, commencement of the installation of a 64 kilowatt hybrid solar photovoltaic system in Region 1, and the installation of a level logger at Amelia Falls in December 2020. Much of these works lay the groundwork for much more that is in store in 2022. Mr. Speaker, under Budget 2022, 1.5 billion and 90 million have been allocated for the capital program and recurrent expenditure, respectively. 666.7 million has been allocated in 2022 for the installation of an additional 20 solar PV mini-grids to 20 communities and public buildings in the hinterland that will benefit 14,324 residents. Work on implementing a significant electrification project to supply, deliver, and install 30,000 solar PV home energy systems for hinterland and riverine communities will commence in the first quarter of 2022. The systems are designed to provide electricity to unserved homes in hinterland and riverine communities using renewable energy. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the basic needs for residents, each system is designed to power 2 9-watt LED lamps, 1 12-watt stand fan, and is equipped with a USB port for charging of portable electronic devices. At the completion of the project, a total of 4.5 megawatts will be installed across 10 administrative regions. This project is expected to benefit over 200 communities and 30,000 households, bringing to a total of 120,000 people who will benefit from this project. The installation of a 1.5 megawatt solar farm for Bartica and a 1 megawatt solar farm for Ret'd will be completed in the first quarter of 2022. The installation of transmission lines for the Ret'd and Bartica solar farms will also be completed this year. The installation of a 0.65 megawatt solar farm for Madhya and a 0.6 megawatt solar farm for Ret'd will be tendered in 2022. The construction of 1.5 megawatt Kumu hydropower plant and rehabilitation and upgrade of the defunct Mokomoko hydropower plant will be advanced in 2022. It's expected for completion in 2023. the design, supply, installation, and commissioning of a 13.8 kV overhead transmission line to connect the Kumu hydropower plant to the distribution network will be tendered in 2022. Also, the 150 kilowatt K2 hydropower project will be completed in 2022. A project started under and grossly mismanaged by the APNU AFC government until it was rescued by our government in August 2020 is now back on stream and will be delivered to the people in this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these initiatives that capitalize on the power of renewable energy will certainly lead us along a path of sustainability while allowing us to reach remote areas to serve the needs of the people who have for too long remained unserved because of their geographical location. Mr. Speaker, even as we move further into our remote communities, attention will also be placed on injecting sustainability into our government buildings. With $500 million being allocated for the installation of solar photovoltaic systems at 100 public buildings in all 10 administrative regions of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on with these projects, but we cannot ignore that Guyana is on the brink of transformation. As you will hear reiterated throughout our messages. No doubt, technological advancements will be a major catalyst upon which such transformation will take place. Within the energy sector, such advancements will also be seen in Guyana. $31.6 billion being budgeted to catalyze e-mobility in Guyana and provide comfort to persons interested in investing in e-mobility by demonstrating opportunities for the private sector. This project entails installing 6 level 3 fast chargers for electric vehicles, scooters, cycle charging stations with the ability to achieve 80% charge in 40 minutes. The proposed locations are SNR parking lot, Guyana Energy Agency, Bouvitong, Giffland, Massey at Providence, and Little Rock Suites at New Amsterdam. Mr. Speaker, despite the challenges faced by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the Guyana Power and Light consumer base increased by 5% in 2021, from 204,162 customers at December the 31st, 2020, to 213,918 customers at December the 31st, 2021. Given the dynamism in the economy that is projected in Budget 2022, GPL expects a further 10% growth in its customer base with an estimate of 235,576 customers by December the 31st, 2022. Mr. Speaker, this increase in customer base is expected to result in a 19% increase in needed generation output for 2022. In order to meet this increased demand, GPL added 9.6 megawatts of new generation assets in 2020, 46.5 megawatts in 2021, and a further 2.8 megawatts is projected to be added in 2022. Mr. Speaker, we are proud to announce that under the energy program, 2 mega projects are to commence in 2022. Wales Gas to Power project will commence in 2022 and is projected to be delivered to the people of Guyana come 2024. Secondly, the Amelia Falls hydropower project will commence in 2022 and is projected to be completed in 2027. Both projects will transform the cost structure of GPL and will also bring stability to the current fluctuations in generation costs due to the volatility of fuel prices. Mr. Speaker, I wish to remind the honorable members on the other side of the House that Amelia Falls was a project that should have been delivering electricity to the people of Guyana. In 2017, Amelia Falls was a project that they failed to support, a project that is scuttled. Notwithstanding, while they were in government, they asked for and received a review by none other than NOR Consult, a review of the Amelia Falls hydropower project. In their final report of 2016, dated 2016, 12th of December 2016, stated clearly, Amelia Falls is the best option for Guyana's energy transition. And I wish to take this opportunity to remind the people of Guyana that by now we would have been enjoying 165 megawatts had the opposition supported that project. Mr. Speaker, there are many other points I want to mention on the power generation, but I'm fearful that I may be running out on time. And I wish to mention at this stage that we have in 2022 planned interventions that will reinforce the Demerara-Berbice interconnected system through upgrades of 4 GPL substations at New Sophia, Georgetown, Good Hope, and Edinburgh, and the rehabilitation and construction of a second 5-kilometer of transmission line from Kingston to Sophia. These investments will strengthen the reliability of the transmission system, reduce technical losses, and provide transmission system redundancy. Other plans for 2022 include the commencement of the upgrade of the Sophia and Kingston substation and rehabilitation of approximately 5 kilometers of associated transmission line. The Wakanam Renewable Energy Project has commenced and realized the installation of 750 kilowatt PV and 1151 kilowatt battery energy storage for the people of that community. For the gas to energy project, GPL is involved in a tripartite arrangement with the task force and SO Exploration Product Guyana Limited to execute the request for proposal for the 300 megawatt power plant and the liquefied natural gas plant. GPL is part of the Amelia Falls Hydropower Project Committee appointed to negotiate the terms and conditions of the project with the preferred bidder. The project, as mentioned before, is expected to commence by mid-year. The Smart Grid project will enable GPL to efficiently manage the mega projects of gas and power and renewable energy initiatives going forward. Mr. Speaker, as we are all aware, our government liberalized the telecommunications sector within 64 days of taking office on August 2nd, 2020. Mr. Speaker, following our government's historic achievement, the efforts of the telecommunication agency since then have been on ensuring that it builds upon the foundation established and that the benefits of liberalization are realized through putting in place the environment and frameworks to maximize competition. Some of this work includes the implementation of local number portability with a target date set for December 2022. This achievement eliminates what would otherwise be a significant barrier to competition if customers had to deal with the time and cost of changing numbers or having two phones in order to take advantage of the best deals on offer at the time. Consequent upon this initiative, there is currently a working group under the leadership of the PUC and including all operators to bring this number portability regime into being. Another competition facilitating measure is the issuance of a license for the operation of a third submarine fiber optic cable connecting Guyana to the global internet via the Atlantic Ocean. This development means that all three of our major service providers will have their own transatlantic submarine fiber optic cables. Once completed, Guyana will have at least 6 independent connections to the global internet, with each of the 3 current facilities-based providers operating both primary and backup cables. This investment in telecommunications infrastructure, together with investments in cheaper and more reliable energy and electricity supply, when placed with our natural advantage of geography outside of the hurricane belts and earthquake zones, will see us ideally placed to facilitate the expansion of business process outsourcing operations by the private sector. In the area of spectrum management, the agency has gone to great lengths to work with all providers to regularize spectrum usage. There are currently 3 operators duly authorized and operating within their lawfully assigned spectrum, providing no less than 4G services, thereby ensuring that operators deploy modern and contemporary technologies to customers. Mr. Speaker, recently a 4th mobile service operator was licensed and will enter the market with rollouts scheduled to commence in calendar year 2022. Mr. Speaker, in our manifesto, we pledge to increase access to cheaper data and bandwidth by scaling up state-sponsored efforts to provide countrywide cover with fiber optic cables and other wireless options to ensure subsidized access to poor and remote households, and to develop the infrastructure and provide the enabling environment to promote the use of ICT across Guyana. We have promised to increase access to cheaper data and bandwidth by scaling up state-sponsored efforts. And in 2021, the NDMA continued to operate and maintain the national broadband network. This infrastructure is now the backbone of the government's online and interoperability efforts and comprises 55 4G LTE sites, 9 third-party leased point-to-point connections, 1 satellite ground station supporting 91 satellite sites, and over 227 kilometers of fiber and 658 mobile LTE units, with fiber and LTE being accessible in the coastal regions and satellite technology being used in the hinterland and remote parts of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, in order to continue to provide internet services to the public sector and further increase the bandwidth supplied to every educational institution on the national broadband network, NDMA prioritized the procurement of increased bandwidth in 2021. Dedicated bandwidth was increased by 167% to better serve government entities, including schools and hospitals, on the national broadband network in 2021 and beyond. This allowed for the increase in Wi-Fi bandwidth from 500 to 200 megabytes per second at 139 public internet access sites. Overall public Wi-Fi consumption increased from 242 megabytes per second in January to 500 megabytes per second in October 2021. Mr. Speaker, this comes on the backdrop of a previous system when I was campaigning and visiting remote parts of this country. When you try to get onto the internet, you just had it buffering, showing connecting. So we are at the stage now where the service has not only increased in terms of reach to the people, but has improved and will continue to improve in 2022. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the continued provision of internet services to 369 education facilities, the planned provision of fiber connectivity to 35 schools, and the provision of internet access to 50 additional nursery and private schools and primary schools, NDMA's focus on providing appropriate equipment and software to schools, as was promised in our manifesto, continue with the provision of advanced teaching aid for smart classrooms, smart boards, which include smart boards, cameras, digital, audiovisual recorders, and auto-directing classroom solutions under the National Broadband Project. Installation of these smart classroom solutions was completed in 10 schools, with Queens College as the main, and the other 9 schools being Lenore Secondary, East Rumville Secondary, Christianborg Secondary, St. Stanislaus College, New Amsterdam Multilateral, Bushlot Secondary, Line Path Secondary, Brigadier Secondary, and Charity Secondary. The APNU, AFC, under the Honorable Katius, failed to implement this project, but had the temerity to try to say that she implemented and completed this project. But this was done by us. Mr. Speaker, 17.1 million United States dollars was made available for a project known as the Hinterland Poor and Remote Communities ICT Connectivity Project. This project had started in terms of signing of the papers and the releasing of money under the APNU AFC government, but nothing was done. And sometimes when we say nothing was done, the honorable members on the other side of the House take offense. But regards to this project, nothing was done. We have the situation when we took office of all the materials, including 4,500 laptops and 200 TV screens stored in a bond in Diamond. I'm happy to report, Mr. Speaker, that we have since installed 33 of those components at 33 communities, and we are in the process of installing another 60 of those components in 60 communities between now and the end of the first quarter of 2022. Mr. Speaker, the year 2021 posed unique challenges for the Civil Defense Commission as natural disaster impact continued to intensify. In 2021, Guyana faced the worst natural disaster in its history. The 2021 May-June rains, which extended to August, resulted in large-scale flooding, which affected 51,622 households across the country. This impact included the displacement of residents, water intrusion in homes, inundation to farmlands and animal dwellings. 13 shelters were set up to provide living space for those displaced families. Yet the CDC continued unwaveringly to execute its mandate, achieving major wins in bringing relief to our citizens in their greatest time of need. Mr. Speaker, among the main achievements of 2021 were the completion of the Ret'd warehouse at a value of $112 million, the distribution of over 160,000 flood and COVID-19 relief hampers in all 10 administrative regions of the country, the launch of the Country Work Program for the CDC for the period 2021 to 2025, the establishment of the National Oil Spill Committee, the resumption of CDC headquarters construction at Thomas Lands, coordination for conducting several training courses to enhance oil spill response capacity of staff, volunteers, partners, agencies, and government agencies, and assistance with the establishment of shelters in regions 2, 5, 6, 9, and 10, which saw up to 257 persons being housed in shelters at the same time across a total of 12 shelter facilities. This was the highest number of people ever housed at any one time in shelters in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, the 2022 current expenditure for the CDC is designed to boost the capacity of the agency to increase its response efficiency to multiple hazards and strengthen the teams at the national, regional, and community levels. To achieve this, the Commission's 2022 budget is built around 3 outcomes: strengthened institutional framework for the mainstreaming of disaster risk management, enhanced knowledge management for disaster risk management, improved capacity for disaster preparedness and response at the national, regional, and community levels. Mr. Speaker, our government, through the CDC, will adopt a more comprehensive approach by fostering interagency linkages and coordination. The development of a national land search and rescue plan and the development of a national recovery policy are key priorities in the 2022 budget cycle. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, the strengthening of regional disaster risk management systems and community-based disaster risk management mechanisms are critical to support the sustainability of the work laid out in 2020 and 2021. These initiatives will bring together a wide cross-section of stakeholders throughout the development processes of these priority areas. Mr. Speaker, we in the PPPC took office in August 2020 with a manifesto that represents the path to success and prosperity for our country and people. Budget 2022 will help us to significantly advance along that path through enormous investments in every sector: economic growth, increased employment for our citizens, ease in cost of living, increase in disposable income, and support for the most vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC speaks about caring and loving Guyanese people when they distance themselves from their own supporters while they sat in their fancy offices behind closed doors. doors that remain shut to the ordinary people from 2015 to 2020. Consulting with people wasn't a thing for them. The voices and cries of Guyanese were shut out and ignored. Mr. Speaker, I have the honor of being the first Prime Minister in many cases to ever visit numerous communities, especially in the hinterland. This speaks to the way our government works, the true definition of boots on the ground. And on the ground shall our boots remain. The APNU comes to tell us about the way this plan and that plan should be. Plans that they had the opportunity to implement but did not. Plans that they lacked even an iota of vision to think of and develop, much less execute. Mr. Speaker, I want the honorable members on the opposite side of this House to rest assured that whether they like it or not, one Guyana will achieve prosperity. One Guyana will overcome the hate and racism people attempt to use as a tool to divide our nation. There is no place for any of this in our one Guyana. And since they have admitted right here in this House their confusion and difficulty with grasping the simple and clear concept of one Guyana, let me remind them that our Guyana belongs to 6 different peoples. But bullies and dictators cannot accept and understand the meaning of one Guyana. The APNU, AFC, doesn't own anybody or any group of people in this country. Mr. Speaker, the biggest problem of our friends on the other side of this House is that they can no longer benefit for themselves. It hurts them to see Guyanese people actually benefiting as they should. It hurts them to see the rapid pace at which Guyana is developing. It hurts them to the core. And Mr. Speaker, it will hurt even more come 2025 when the people of Guyana re-elect the PPPC back into government. And they will have to come to sit on that side and accept the reality of this new era, an era of vast development, as we continue to build our country, our one Guyana, and improve the lives of Guyanese across all the regions of this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.